Bracing for takeoff when your son leaves the nest. Welcome to the Mothers of Boys Survival Guide, the podcast for moms who are deep in the trenches and trying to raise good men without losing their minds. I'm Susie Shaw.
And I'm Cheryl Bond. And today we're diving into a milestone that hits hard and fast. Launching your 18-year-old son into the world. Whether he's heading off to college or joining the military, taking a gap year, figuring it out, one late night snack at a time, this transition is a big one for him and for you. We're going to share stories, tips, and a few tearful moments because moms of boys know that launching isn't just about letting go, it's about hanging on to the relationship as everything else changes.
Joining us today is Rebecca Vandal, a mom who's juggling two man cubs, those large teenage boys, a career and a household. Her oldest son is getting ready to head off to college, so we're going to focus on more of the college launch today. And she's got questions and is wondering what's around the corner. So grab a coffee and join us as we tackle one of the biggest moments in motherhood, the launch. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi, Susie and Cheryl. Thank you so much for letting me join your conversation as a mom who is fresh off the emotional roller coaster of launching my firstborn into the world as an adult.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm not sure you're off the roller coaster yet.
Yeah. My kids are even older and it's still a roller coaster. I have four. I have three girls and one boy.
And I have two boys like you who are now fully adulting. So we're here for you, Rebecca. And congratulations on making it to this significant milestone.
Thank you. Thanks, Susie. Thanks so much. It is a huge milestone and accomplishment to raise a kid to the age of 18.
I call that first stage 0 to 3 the death wish stage because they seem to have a death wish and are always, falling and everything else. And then the second death wish stage is teenagers. So bravo, 18
Yeah.
is a big accomplishment. And so how are you feeling about that?
So to tell you the truth, after a few weeks of being in complete shock that this time has finally come, and it was a complete shock, I actually feel fantastic. And I want to share a quick story to offer some words of encouragement to moms who are in the trenches of raising the younger kids or the teenagers, because no doubt those are crazy, crazy years. But when my son was around 4 months old, I had a doctor's appointment that I had to go to for myself. And I went, my husband and I went into the doctor's appointment and I had my son strapped to me in the baby Bjorn. And this was a new doctor. And I walked into the doctor's office with my son staring at him. And the doctor took one look at my son and said, "Having a baby is like having a house fall on you." And I thought that is exactly what it feels like. And then when he graduated this summer from high school, I remembered that story and felt like the house has been lifted off of me. So for all the young moms out there, I just want to say the time goes extremely fast and you will crawl out from underneath that house before you know it.
Yeah, it does go so fast. I had four of my kids, left high school and went to college. And something I wish I would have done that I didn't was keep a short little journal throughout their childhood. And, they've asked me a lot of things about their childhood and I can't remember because it was such a hectic time. So that's one piece of advice that I would say to moms out there that have younger kids right now.
Yes, and I actually did keep a journal for both of my boys when they were first born, and I gave it to my son as a graduation gift.
Oh, go you.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah, well, so the trick is now, when he was born 18 years ago, I didn't know that they wouldn't teach kids how to write in cursive at that point in time, and they haven't taught the kids that, and so he can't read any of my
There's probably an app for that to translate cursive.
Right,
For for the
Right.
kids.
We didn't have apps back then either. But he kind of laughs about it and said that he has read some of it and thinks it's nice. So that is a wonderful, wonderful tip, Cheryl.
The other piece of advice I would give to parents with a child launching and going off to college is it's such an unlimited atmosphere for learning and meeting new people. And I would say really try to encourage your college approaching son to check out all the different clubs and try to meet a lot of different people because it is just an opportunity to find yourself really.
So I found the communication prior to moving in between the roommates was limited. I mean, really limited as opposed to probably girls. And Cheryl, you can tell us about that.
What I can tell you is that my son did not coordinate colors with his roommate. The girls, they had everything. All right, colors are we picking? What color's your comforter? Everything needed to match for the most part, with most of my girls.
So one of the other things that I put together was a first aid kit. Um, and for both boys. And I went to, I think it was Target, and I just had a little, first aid sort of thing. And then I filled it with thermometer and bandages and band-aids and Advil and Tylenol and all those sort of basic first aid things. And one of the funny things that my son recently told me was that was one of the big icebreakers for him meeting people in his dorm and on his floor because everybody knew he had this first aid kit. So when they had a headache or needed a band-aid, they would come and bang on his door and introduce themselves to him and say, "Hey, I hear you got a first aid kit."
Right.
That's
He'll be
funny.
very popular. And my husband just realized the other day, oh, we should probably put the thermometer in there because the kids, right, for the last 18 years, they were sick all the time, right? And getting everybody
Yeah.
sick in the house. So yeah, good idea.
Something else that's related to that is I realized that my kids weren't used to making their own doctor's appointments or anything. I mean, we always did that for them in high school. So I think you want to make sure that your kids have their general practitioner's phone number in their phone. And I mean, it sounds basic, but my kids didn't, and I didn't think of it initially. And or whatever relevant doctor, because they need to start learning to do that on their own. And I found that I was doing that for them.
So what other things are you thinking about and how can we help, Rebecca?
So, ever since my son was born, our relationship has been constantly evolving and growing as both he and I evolve and grow. And now that he's leaving home for college, I think it is essential for us to give him the space that he needs to follow his dreams and make them reality. And we're also connected through technology. It's easier than ever to stay connected. The trick is figuring out how to stay connected and supportive without being overbearing. So, how do I do that?
I didn't stay too connected with them. I didn't reach out that often. I was under the impression that when I didn't hear from them, things were good. And that was generally the case. And then, so I would just reach out just once in a while, thinking of you. How are things going? Love you. But um, other than that, I kind of let them just have their space. And then obviously, all of them go through difficult times as well. And that's when the phone would ring, and that's when I'd hear from them more. So I would always try to pick up the phone no matter what I was doing when they were away at college.
I found it very different for both boys. And I wrote a book. I have some of these tips in the book. I call the boys Ernest and Exuberance. My oldest boy was Ernest, and he was just a little bit shyer and quieter, and it was a much more emotional launch for him and for us. And he called pretty regularly and talked to both my husband and myself. And we were careful to not make him think he was missing too much so that it would make him homesick. He was already kind of homesick. Um, and and he wasn't socially aggressive, so that was stressful for him. There that first semester I think is the trickiest, where they're really just getting their sea legs. And he was about 4 hours away from where we lived, and so our goal was to try to keep him there and let him become comfortable in this new environment. So we didn't encourage him to come home. We didn't go pick him up, but we did go and see him. We went to the Parents' Day. Um, there were times when he was not, he was homesick, and so my husband went to see him on his own, or I went to see him on my own, so that we could still keep track of Exuberance, who was the younger the younger boy, and he was totally different. I mean, talk about cutting the umbilical cord. I don't know if your son's doing that, but I mean, he took out the cleaver. It was like, um, so we were just about high fiving when we dropped him off to school. Um, and then he didn't check in. I mean, he just, you know, was on his own and was not interested in communicating whatsoever. And that was not acceptable either. I mean, he did have to communicate on a somewhat regular basis. I mean, once a week, we would like to hear from him. And so because he was only checking in when he needed money, I finally negotiated really with him, and I called it proof of life money. So this is this you have to prove, you have to have a conversation with me, and then I will send you money. We negotiated him out. This is your weekly sort of allowance, but I'm not going to give it to you if you're just texting me and asking me for money, or a check in isn't a text. And if I call you, that's not a check in either. You have to call me. And one of the ground rules was that there were three parts to the conversation. So he had to tell me the best thing that happened to him all week, the worst thing that happened to him all week. And this is the really important one. He had to ask me how I was doing, right? And they're so into themselves and introspective that it really moved our relationship into a much more adult relationship, and where we could have real, conversations. It wasn't aggressive, it was much more friendly. And that only lasted about a semester or two. And then the next year he got a job on campus, and that was the end of me having to pay him to talk to me.
Right. But Susie, that's great advice for the dinner table, even right now, for communicating
Right.
with your kids, right? Like outline questions, and you can have a conversation during dinner instead of just sitting there and with them stuck on their phones wanting to leave as soon as they put their fork down.
Right, right. And last week we shared a podcast with a mom of seven, and she talks about some of these dinner table, conversations and rules that they had, even during sports, because when they get older, everybody gets into sports. And one of the things that I love that she talks about is that even if they weren't having dinner, at the end of the night, they'd have dessert. They would just have a shorter version of sitting around the table. They'd have dessert or fruit or something, so that they could look in each other's faces at least once a day. So Cheryl, did your were your kids homesick? Did you have any of that going on too, or sort of difficult launching moments?
I think I think definitely the kids who went to a college further away did feel more homesick. I think knowing that you can't just get home easily sort of was a little bit more emotional.
Hmm.
Whereas my two of them went far away, two of them were within an hour from our house. So I think that that was uh, had something to do with it.
Hmm.
And then we would always make sure that they knew we had a planned trip. So just sort of coaching them through those difficult times. And like you, Susie, I do remember toning down anything like super fun we were doing at home so that they didn't have the fear of missing out on really
Hmm.
special times, you know.
What else, Rebecca? Huh?
So I recently asked my younger son if he was going to miss his older brother when he goes off to college. And his reply was, I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like to being an only child.
Hmm. That's so true. That's for my kids. When my son went away and left just my daughter at home, she really missed him a lot. She didn't like how quiet the house was. There wasn't anybody to, it felt so different. Uh, but then again, she also did like the attention and how much time we had with her. So that was very special for that sibling left behind, I think.
And my younger son, Exuberance, he had the same exact reaction, and he thought he was very excited to be an only child. And then he realized that we had just moved from man to man coverage to now he had, two parents, two kids. Now he had two parents just focused on him, and
Yeah.
so there was there was a plus and minus, right, to that attention. It was a love-hate, I think, relationship because we were a little bit more attentive to
Hmm.
him. So I would say, personally, one of the big changes that happened for me was now that I was down to having to parent one, child in person instead of two, that I was able to focus a little bit more on my career and my business and doing things for myself. And that was huge to be able to take that period of time that you get back a little bit for yourself.
One thing that you will see a change in is how much your child appreciates home after they're away for the first semester. And they come home and their room's all cleaned up and they have a really clean bathroom. And it's not something it's just something, that naturally took for granted when they grew up in this home. But I really saw a change in appreciation for being home and having good meals cooked. And so that was a real positive, a real nice thing.
It's like they go away and you're stupid, and
Yeah.
and they come back and your intelligence has
Yeah.
increased significantly during that period.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice time. My son has a pretty clear plan for what he wants to study in school and what he wants to do with his life and the type of job he wants, all that kind of stuff. And recently he went off all on his own and he got a part time job through his college. So when he goes to college, he's also going to have a part time job. So I'm very happy that he has a clear vision and a drive, but my concern is that he is taking on more than he has time for, and he's going to become overwhelmed pretty quickly. So do you have any suggestions on how to handle that?
Yeah, I definitely would say, that is a concern because they're now managing their own schedule. And sometimes when you have someone who's an overachiever, you feel like you have to pull them back in because you don't want them getting sick and run down.
Yep, totally agree. And
Mhm.
I will also say it depends so much on the child. Ernest couldn't have handled that extra pressure. He's has he had ADHD, and so just focusing on the amount of his current schedule was a lot for him. And exuberance did better with a job because it kept him on a schedule, and he was busier and having more activities and more structured schedules was better for his personality, and it helped keep him on track. I will say that failing is going to happen, and that is a bit just part of life. And so, encouraging resilience and them to bring themselves up and get over the failure is a big thing. And there were plenty of times when, you know, my husband and I weren't the people to get through to him, to either one of the boys. And so we would reach out to other people to check in on them, grandparents and aunt and uncle, older cousin, maybe the brother. And we just sort of tee it up and ask them to connect. And that was really, really helpful strategy. I still do that. Shh. Don't,
Yeah.
don't tell anybody. Um, so, and then there were times that they needed something more mental health counseling. There, somebody might have passed away, or there might have been something very traumatic going on. And there are so many resources on campus that it was important to encourage them to go advocate for themselves, get a tutor, help with the course that they were having a hard time, mental health counseling, guidance counselors, and occasionally we would line somebody up remotely if those solutions didn't work out on campus. But that's part of their resources right there. They need to take advantage of it.
Well, and it is true that they have so many resources now. They have way more resources. We did when we were leaving the home and going to college or going off to our first job. And this just reminded me, my younger son who plays football um, came home the other day and said, okay, this year I'm going to take yoga classes.
Yeah,
I never
That's
ever
awesome.
he would say
right.
that. Yeah. So I said, great, we'll find some. So yeah, which is all into the wellness and the whole being and all that kind of stuff. So
I do have a tip for after your son's gone off to college, and we did this, and this was really important for my husband and I, and it was appreciated, by the kids. So I invited the parents over who I knew had sent their kids off, and their spouses came too. And I made a pot of something, I don't know, soup, chili, whatever, doesn't really matter. And we had a care package party. So the way it works is, if you have 6 care packages that you're making, then you instruct everybody who's coming to bring 6 of one item to go into the care package. It could be homemade cookies, it could be ramen, it could be, candy, it could be Play-Doh, whatever it is, fun stuff. But everybody brings 6 of one thing. And then I went to the post office and I picked up some medium priority mailboxes, and we all packed up the care packages, and we took a group picture, and I printed the picture, and we had a little message of encouragement, and everybody sort of wrote fun messages and you know do great things, and we sent it off to the kids, and the kids reacted so positively, not only about the silly stuff and the stuff in the package, but just that, here's this group of people bigger than just their parents, right? That really cares about their success. And so I want to encourage you to do that.
That's a great idea, Susie. That is an
and sounds a
awesome,
lot
awesome
of fun.
idea.
Yeah, it is fun. It's very
Hmm.
fun. Um, last note that I have is that because your child is now 18, they're a legal adult, and you should get them to sign a healthcare power of attorney before they hit the road in case anything happens. So um,
Hmm.
you just don't, it's one of those things you don't think of.
I believe that his pediatrician had all those forms. So when we went in, we were able to get all that done through the doctor's office.
Oh,
Yeah.
good man. Yeah. Or woman, whoever.
Right.
Good doc, right? So at the end of each podcast, we typically ask our guest to give a quote, or a mantra or something that, helps them get through this period. This period's going to be new for you. So I thought this time we'd shake it up a little bit and each one of us would give a little quote. One of my favorite quotes, just to get the ball rolling, because I gave each boy Oh, the Places You Go by Dr. Seuss. Love, love, love that book. And one of the quotes in there is, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, and you can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you'll know, and you'll be the one who'll decide where to go.
Yep, that's great. Well, I don't know if I can top Dr. Seuss, Susie. But I do have a final tip for moms that are launching their kids into adulthood, and that is to focus on the positive aspects. So as you can imagine, the week of my son's high school graduation, I was highly emotional, to put it lightly. And I kept reminding myself to just stay steady in the boat and focus on the positives, such as how proud I am of him and how excited I am for him. And also, now I have more time to go and do the things that I enjoy to do. So, my husband and I have always liked to go to concerts, and I recently went to a concert on a Sunday night. I went to a concert on a Sunday night. So, yeah. So this is just part of our motherhood journey, and this is actually the good part, I think. It's what we have been working towards from day one, from when our kids are born. So I just hope that we should, all have time to sit back and celebrate having time for ourselves.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It is an emotional time. It is a big step. So that's great advice. Well, I always keep a bunch of quotes in my phone whenever I see something, and then I have them handy to send to my kids when they might need it, or when I just randomly am reaching out with something I think would be helpful. And I did, when I was looking over them, I did see one that I thought was relevant for somebody who was launching and leaving your home. And it was advice from a tree, which says, stand tall and proud, go out on a limb, remember your roots, drink plenty of water, be content with your natural beauty, and enjoy the view. And I think all of those things are relevant to being off on your own and away from home.
Totally agree. Thank you, Rebecca, for joining us today, and to all the moms, the mothers of boys, the mob who are in this launch stage. Just keep telling yourself, I've got this.
Well, thank you, Susie and Cheryl. It was fun to be with you today.
Yeah, wishing you and your family and your son all the best. And thank you all for joining us today. Follow The Mob on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and your favorite podcast platform. Be kind to yourselves, moms, and have a great week.